assuming you can see my screen. All right, very good. All right. So first off is our core team members. Myself, want to give a chance. Sandy, say hello, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. So my name's Sandy Fogg, and I'm the program coordinator here at the Coastal Resilience Lab. So I am helping to do some support on this Strong Coast project, as well as some more general administration and help supporting Mike here at the lab and the other projects that we have. I come from a kind of really interdisciplinary marine science background, but all kind of revolving around the relationship between humans and the sea and how we can work kind of on the policy nexus, the management nexus, to make sure that we can have sustainable systems and live and have healthy environments and healthy people.
All right, Borja's going to have a chance to lead on R1, so I'll let him introduce himself at that point. Camilla, you want to say hi?
Hi everyone, I'm Camila. I work for my group already been working there for 3 years, and I work as a coastal modeler, basically preparing hydrodynamics and morphodynamic models to understand risk. Nice to meet you all.
David is our newest team member, officially started last week or week before last. David, can you introduce?
Good morning and afternoon and almost night to everyone. I'm David. As Mike said, I have just joined UCSC, and I will be conducting some of the modeling for this project.
All right, not on the call today is one of our graduate students, Brooke, who handles a number of our spatial analyses as part of the work. Some of our main roles from UCSC are supporting Maya, myself as co-director in all of this, and then we have some of our biggest roles and deliverables as an institution in themes 1 and 4. And then kind of, so with that, I'm going to turn to Borja to talk about the work that he's co-leading with Frank on theme 1, and to introduce himself. And Borja, just tell me when you want me to advance the slides.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, so I co-lead this activity with Frank. We started very recently to have regular meetings with the USF team. We will be leading numerical modeling, and they will be doing very interesting work in remote sensing and developing new algorithms for getting baseline data. So go to the next slide. Yeah, so essentially we have 2 main activities. So first, assess coastal hazard risk, accounting for climate change, economic assets, population, and different geographies, and then include in those risk models the effects of nature-based solutions, right? So the role of ecosystems as natural infrastructure, but also proactive new nature-based adaptation projects. And the mechanics are similar, but we are including new designs, right? Let's say green designs. So we are doing this at 2 scales, so regionally and locally, and has important implications. So go to the next slide. The research questions from the proposal are: how do coral reefs, mangroves influence current and future coastal risks? What is the capacity of these systems and hybrid interventions to reduce it? How these services vary between communities and geographies, and what is the market value of these services, and if they are cost effective over the different time scales. Right, go on, next. The general approach is represented in this infographic. So essentially we'll be comparing scenarios, right? The scenarios of, in this infographic, you see the degradation. So what happens with mangroves providing flood attenuation at the moment, and also sediment transport control, versus on a scenario where you just degrade the mangroves and you have enhanced flooding just because that natural barrier is not there. So essentially, you need to know where are the offshore dynamics, so hurricanes, cyclones, storm surge, wave action, you need to know how those climate forcing is happening in the Caribbean, but also in front of your project site. So that's what we define as nearshore dynamics. And then we need to evaluate the role of the habitat in coastal processes, assess impacts in terms of flooding and erosion, and then consequences in terms of people and dollars mostly protected. Go to the next slide. So we break down this nice infographic into a sequence of different steps, but essentially there are three key parts. So it's dealing with the climate hazards, and there is a lot of work in this R1 package on climate modeling. The second part is ecosystems. So essentially evaluating what is the role of those ecosystems on hydrodynamics and morphodynamics. And the third is the consequence. So it's socioeconomic evaluation of the effects of those projects. Go to the next slide. All right, so let's get a little bit more detail about the specific activities that we have under this package. So the first is R1 is climate projections of coastal hazards. So we will get historic climate and future projections of wave data and stream sea levels from ERA 5. ERA 5 is a wave reanalysis reaching now up to 1940. So we have over 80 years now of wave data. GTSM is a global storm surge model. And then we will also derive future projections of waves and stream sea levels from a number of models that are coming out now from SIMP6. So this is the new generation of global climate models, right? And then I have there hurricanes. So we didn't say anything in the proposal about hurricanes intentionally, but we aim to resolve it in a very smart way in this proposal. So our aim from the beginning was also to include the hurricane analysis as part of this project. Then what we do is, so this is the Caribbean scale. The 1.2 is the dynamic downscaling of waves and sea levels to the near shore. And for that, we will use essentially a combination of far and near shore models that will take the offshore conditions, let's say, you know, what happens in the middle of the Caribbean, and will translate everything or propagate everything to the project site. So at 20, 30 meters deep, right? So in front of the coastline. And the way we do that is through a combination of numerical modeling and machine learning techniques. And also we stop at a certain distance or depth from the coastline, because there are we need to start modeling processes in those depths that these models are not able to handle. So that's kind of like why we do this downscaling, because there is a lot of transformation from offshore to the near shore, and then we need other type of models. And then we are going to do, and this is something I'm pretty excited about doing now or mainstream in our project, and that's stochastic emulation. So that's essentially, we have a collaborator, which was my PhD advisor, who is now very actively doing climate emulators. And this essentially, we don't rely only on the historic climate, so storms that did happen, or maybe future projections of 30-year periods that you say, like this model says that the future will look like this, right? And then we only have 4 numerical simulations of those. So with this climate emulating techniques, we can say, you know, let's imagine 100 potential future climates. So it uses synoptic conditions of sea level pressure, winds, and surface temperature to generate potential futures, and then derives stream sea levels, waves, and also tropical cyclones. So the idea would be that we will create a climate emulator for the Caribbean, and then the 3 sites will have not only dynamic future climate change projections, but also stochastic alternative futures. And so this multiplies the number of you know, conditions that we'll evaluate our project against. Go to the next slide. which, by the way, that is called Tesla, time varying stochastic emulator for flat hazards. So then we will evaluate the role of ecosystems in coastal dynamics and risk at 2 levels, so regionally and locally. Regionally, you need to think about the scale of the USV and Belize, essentially. So that will be the scale, right? So regionally to nationally. And we will just focus on flood risk and storm-induced erosion and potentially compound risks. So the effects of if you're on the shoreline during a storm, how flooding gets enhanced by that effect. And we will do that obviously at a with different granularity at the local scale with high resolution, high fidelity models, and quantifying the risk reduction benefits of potential new projects. So not only at the regional scale, we will only look at what happens if you lose the ecosystem. At the local scale, we'll work with the other teams to figure out, like, you know, what those projects, where they will be implementing, what are the characteristics and what they will look like, and then what would be the effect in terms of shoreline erosion and erosion control and flood mitigation. We have, if you recall the meeting from Miami, we had a few issues with the timelines, right? So we have organized our package in 2 phases. So the first phase is just using recurrence level based valuation. So that's essentially the framework that I presented, but we will be just running a specific return period. So we will take the historic climate and the future climate, and we'll say, okay, so we're going to define the 10, the 100, and the 500-year storm. And then we'll evaluate flood maps for those specific probabilities. So that's not a stochastic. That's essentially looking at the statistical distribution and defining recurrence levels. But it requires a smaller number of simulations. So we will do that regionally for Belize, USV, and Florida, based on the models that we have and improving a number of things. But that will be relatively fast, so we can inform, provide inputs to the rest of the teams, and particularly for the engagement with the community. So we aim to produce results probably in the next quarter, 2 quarters, probably for all the 3 regions, so we can move quickly in terms of identifying potential hotspots or site analysis. In a second phase, we will use this capacity to do a stochastic modeling and climate emulators to actually do this in a probabilistic way. And I will not go into the details, but involves machine learning and meta models to actually, you know, be able to assess potential any other coastal forcing. Go to the next slide. Yeah, and the final component of this activity is actually doing long-term shoreline projection. So essentially how the shoreline, not only flooding, but how the shoreline will behave with effects of these projects. This has been done in the past, so there are shoreline models that are able to project how the shoreline will change, but nobody has done it yet with the inclusion of adaptation projects, right? Because it requires some technicalities and complex issues. So we have that activity. I'm pretty excited about this one. It's quite, I think it's the last year. So I'm not really worried about that yet, but we will have to find a site where we'll do this like century scale shoreline projections with and without adaptation projects. Go to the next. Yeah, and so where we are is we have extracted this historic data, and then we are right now working on downscaling this for USV, Florida, and Belize, starting with USV. So we have divided, think about this as 3 independent projects, and we are starting with USV in the very short term. David is actively working on that. And then we have got different climate projections. So that was our first deliverable. So we got projections from CECIRO, from the Australians, and then we are in the process of getting the high resolution projections from the USDS, which is just for logistically just difficult, just because it's huge data. So very shortly we'll have that data and we will be able to complete the time series with the hindcast, so the past period, and the mid-century time series. Yeah, and kind of the workflow here is once we get the data, we will do the downscaling, we will calculate the recurrence levels, we'll include that in XSpeech that we already have for Florida and USV, and then we will use a model that's called Sphinx to produce flat maps. And then we'll calculate the benefits of those ecosystems by discounting with and without ecosystem or different scenarios once we have that risk modeling machine. Go to the next. Yeah, okay, so that's it.
Okay, thanks, Borja. I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the work in research theme 4, which is really when we take all of the work that we've been developing across all of the teams and think in particular about some of the ways that we can use those tools to be. Hey, Les, why don't we come back at the end of the presentation and then you'll be first. You can keep your hand up, that's okay. So in this, again, the kind of core bits of this are, thinking about how we identify equitable strategies, using nature-based solutions, and how can we ultimately be able to find, which may be easier than folks recognize, some of the financing, but getting it directed well is actually what I believe to be ultimately, the challenge that we're trying to address together as a project. I just wanted to, because Maya and I have been harping so much on folks to remember to look at the project management plan and think about what's in there and where appropriate, we can continue to revise that. But a couple of the core deliverables that, we're particularly in the lead on in this theme 4 is around benefit cost analyses, which we will do in each of the geographies to understand, where we could implement and find funding for particularly cost-effective nature-based solutions. And then there's, a fair bit of work in working with the risk industry, insurance in particular, both in their risk models and in their financing tools. And so there's a variety of kind of core deliverables here that we look at as a team in terms of improving that modeling, improving the data that goes into that modeling, being able to premium price nature in those insurance models, and then ultimately being able to develop things like insurance policies for mangroves, which have not been done just yet. And I'm just going to show kind of just a couple of image examples of kind of some of what that work looks like as we're going along. This is work that Camilla in particular has been leading, an outgrowth of some of the stuff that we did with USGS and others and the Nature Conservancy. But this is Christiansted with a potential reef restoration along this line here. And then we look at the flooding, both in this case for a 1 in 50 year event before that restoration, and that's in the yellow, and then after that restoration, that's in the pinkish color here. And so the difference in these is the benefits in those areas of potential reef restoration. And we've been going out discussing these general results with stakeholders, and then we will be doing some even more in-depth modeling with some very specific restoration scenarios in mind, both here and I think likely in Frederiksted, but we'll see. Gives you some idea of that kind of work. This is an example of the kind of work that we're doing with the insurance industry to incorporate nature into their models to be able to premium price nature. We've done work on mangroves all around the world, identifying, what are the expected benefits provided by mangroves for risk reduction, for example, in Florida. And we're working with the company Cat Risk that does the primary insurance modeling for insurance policies that FEMA buys. You may not be aware that FEMA buys insurance now, to incorporate mangroves in their models and then to be able to estimate those benefits and ultimately be able to tell FEMA and others what the price of insurance would be if Florida were to lose its mangroves. And then I want to say kind of lastly, as sort of a project that we're working on as part of all of this work is to think about developing adaptation markets that might parallel mitigation markets. So if you think about mitigation markets and mitigation credits, what you're doing is getting credits to, in this case, grow trees, sequester carbon, and reduce the impacts of climate change to people and property and nature in the future. Well, those effects are real right now. So why don't we think about how we change, how we invest, and do some of that investing in mitigation? We absolutely need that, but also in adaptation so that we reduce the climate risks to people and property now. And this is some work in review. We'll see what happens. So just wanted to give a kind of a quick, broad overview of the kind of work that we're doing as part of the UCSC contributions to some of the key research themes. Thank you. Les.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That was really helpful. And I don't remember, was it David or Borja who gave the modeling presentation? It was David?
Borja.
It was Borja. Yeah, hi, Borja. We've talked about this before, but number one, the climate modeling stuff looks terrific. And it's very complex, so that's all. It seems like you guys have a handle on all of that. The one thing I keep coming back at is like an axe I'm grinding, is this business of the complexity of the reef system and understanding how we should direct restoration or stewardship for maximal benefit when you have multiple tiers of barrier, patch reef, atoll, and so forth.
Yeah.
And you've assured me we can do it, but I'm wondering how we do it.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I would say a couple things and then let Borja answer. But in the first instance, I would say when, one, I want to reiterate that, we're doing one set of models at the national/regional level. So we'll be able to provide some actually quite very good, state-of-the-art results at those kinds of levels. But once we really dive into that site-specific level, then we can start accounting for much more of the kinds of things that you've been raising, not just in reef characteristics,
Yeah, but also forest.
in the hydrodynamics and in the forest. And now Borja has to put up with the non-expert answering, and now we'll let the expert answer.
No, I mean, that's correct. I mean, the regional assessment is just trying to provide like, okay, so where are the hotspots? What is the bulk number, right? Or the bulk value? We want to do this stochastically because I think that's where the scientific contribution is. Like most of these models are actually run for, let's define flat storm conditions. I'm gonna believe that, those are, what is defining the benefit. Actually, the second phase would be we want to do this fully probabilistic. So let's say you may have any cyclone, any potential combination of conditions, what would be the benefit at the regional scale? So that's something that is not so explicitly in the proposal, but that's something that we aim to explore and contribute. However, the regional analysis is just with the paper that we published, how we did the US national analysis. We will improve a number of things to get more precision, better granularity, climate change projections, but essentially it's leveraging most of that technology. It's efficient for us to do it in the short term to identify where are those hotspot areas, essentially, where do we get the highest benefit. With the idea that that information, if we put it in Maya's and others' hands early, it will help to inform the conversations with the communities. And then in the meantime, once we have defined the 6 sites, then we can start working on local models, let's call it, right? And those local models will account for all the complexity that you define in terms of circulation, storm conditions, sediment transport, but that would be, let's say, a different type of modeling that we will have to do. That is not like in the regional scale, we will just do probably on cross transects or, reducing the complexity, right, of the processes. At the local scale, we'll do like fully dynamic phase resolving models that are able to simulate every wave traveling through the reef, essentially.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions before we turn it over to Maya and USF? Okay, and of course, want to say the recording will be available. If you have questions, you can feel free to email any of us on the team. So much appreciated, Maya.
Sure. Thanks for that presentation, everyone. And I'll go ahead and share this slideshow for the University of South Florida. And I think we have quite a few members of the team on here. So when we get to your slides, just pipe in, unmute, and speak, because I can't see everyone who is on here. So just a little background on USF, a rather new university, only founded in 1956, with campuses in the Tampa Bay region, 3 different campuses, classified as both doctoral university, very high research activity and community engaged. And a community engaged classification started in 2006, just became a member of AAU, just like the University of Miami. Really large state institution, and 45% of our students come from underrepresented populations. So this is the leadership team from USF in terms of who is on here, either as a co-PI or senior personnel. And I have slides for everyone, which we'll jump into soon. We also have postdoctoral researchers and graduate students on our team, as well as consultants. And I think everyone in here has a slide. Just a little background on some of the.
Hey Maya, the Fathom thing, is there any way to move that away from the screen? Just because.
Are you still seeing it?
No, it's gone now. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. How do I get back to advance my slides? Okay. In terms of some of the work that we've been doing that sort of brought this team together, going back all the way to 2005, I think when I started at USF, we'd gotten an Alfred P. Sloan minority PhD program started to increase the number of underrepresented minority PhDs. So when I started, for example, our department had not graduated any minority PhDs. And that was the case for many of the departments in engineering. So a great emphasis sort of on student training within our college that many of us have been involved with. And we'll talk about that when we share Mr. Batson's slides. In 2012, we had a Partners for International Research and Education grant known as PIRE from the National Science Foundation that was looking at water energy systems. And students were, of course, working internationally. It was an opportunity for us to partner with anthropology, and Dr. Zarger is a co-PI on COPE and was involved with that. Both of us were senior personnel on this project. And it was basically an experience that we had in Belize, where one of our PhD students, who's now a consultant on the project, Dr. Christy Prouty, was really a student who sort of did a lot of her work here, but embedded, spent a lot more time than many of our other students who were going to sort of European countries, and so as part of their PIRE. And that sort of helped build this relationship, in particular with Placencia colleagues here. Then in 2017, we sort of built on Dr. Prouty's experience and did a national research traineeship that was much more focused in terms of bringing the anthropology with engineering and then with marine sciences together. And that was now the partners here are USF and University of the Virgin Islands. In 2012, we did establish a 3+2 program with UVI where their students do 3 years there, and then they get 2 years in engineering at USF. And in particular, looking at UVI as being a historically Black college and university, providing sort of the opportunity for an engineering degree. Working with the marine science program, that's where this FUSE grant, this NRT grant came in, and we were really looking at food, energy, water systems. And again, I think the students really started their work in 2019. COVID came, but by now a lot of more interest is not just the wastewater, but sort of water quality at Keys as it links to work that, say, Fragments of Hope has been doing with core restoration. So that inspiration from FOH's work and our experience in Belize helped lead to 2022, us having the COPE project. And so just want to acknowledge the importance of, I have something that's making a lot of noise on my screen. So I'm gonna hopefully stop talking soon, but the importance of Fragments of Hope in helping to bring many of us as partners on this grant to write the grant based on their sort of work in Belize and sort of overlapping with many different researchers on this team. This is our research thrust diagram or themes that everyone knows about. Oh, I didn't put the labels here, but as we go through what our team is working on, I think we're working pretty much in every area here. They will talk about the different research thrust. Just some background on me. So as the co-director here, kind of working across multiple different thrusts, but I am currently the PI on various grants that do overlap with COPE, including one looking at nitrogen pollution, and others that look at really changing how we train students and how we evaluate faculty, in particular, integrating more community engaged work into our curriculum or our research. I've had experience leading both a research experience for teachers and research experience for undergraduate program. Those are deliverables that are required for COPE that we had to put that we will be submitting these 2 grants as part of our project, and something that I realize falls under my responsibility. So we'll be working on this to hopefully at least do an RET in by October of this year. Dr. Zargar, Becky, I think you're on.
I'm here. Hi, everyone. I was supposed to be flying to Belize right now, but instead I'm flying to Belize tomorrow. So I was able to join the call. So Maya shared a lot about some of the interdisciplinary coastal sustainability projects that I have listed here. I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with Maya and partner with her on many different things. And I think you'll see the expertise of a lot of our students. You know, we share a lot of the training cross disciplines, and I think it's a unique, and it's been I think a really impactful collaboration. So one of the things I was hoping to share, in addition to what's on the slide here, is I guess first I should say my lead role in COPE as a co-PI is R-NOT, which is the community engaged research. And along with Scott Evans, we are responsible for the deliverables and kind of guiding the research that is social science related and community engaged in all 3 sites. And then I've done ethnographic and qualitative research in Belize for more than 20 years. And so most of my research, kind of hands-on research, will focus on Belize. And as far as my background goes, I like to kind of use that as a way of dovetailing into sharing a bit about the kind of data that we have collected and that we would plan to collect going forward. Late breaking news, the USF IRB has been approved and it's underway as far as getting the in-country approval. I have an appointment tomorrow to get that taken care of. So that's all good news. The kind of ethnographic and environmental anthropology research that I have done in Belize, as well as in Florida, really focuses on understanding local values, perceptions, and firsthand experiences with a changing environment along coastlines. And what that means as far as the kind of data that our students are interested in and the kind of information that they're wanting to collect is that it's often attempts to be representative of multiple communities, multiple perspectives. We're really interested in the idea of discourse and discussion and experience. You know, how do people talk about these experiences of risk, what they are concerned about, the kinds of futures that they would like to see. And we're also interested in the sort of management and policy aspects of human dimensions of some of the the interactions with reef and mangrove that we've been talking about. So as far as the kind of information, the kind of data that we have, I think it varies a lot from interview transcripts, quantitative and qualitative survey responses. A lot of the past research included more structured methods. For COPE, we're really focusing on less structured, but also systematic relationship building and interviews that use the expertise and are guided by our community fellows who are Belizean and who have obviously the firsthand expertise that those of us who are coming from other universities and other locations don't have. So I think that approach is going to be a really important and unique one for this project. And hopefully will guide a lot of the activities that are not does in each of the research sites. So if you're interested in finding out any more details about some of the skill sets or some of the kinds of data that we have collected or we plan to collect, I look forward to having those conversations, particularly about overlaps between future scenarios, models, and projections, and how we kind of translate that to these personal firsthand experiences as far as the kinds of data that we collect. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Alex Webb. Oh. You've probably gotten emails from me on the listserv. It often says William Webb. I go by Alex. I like to fancy myself an organizational anthropologist. I'm real interested in how people make sense as they organize, particularly how they integrate technology and work around technology. My background, I got my master's from UBI on their marine science program, and I was sponsored by for a portion of it by the Research Institute for Humanity and Nature in Kyoto, Japan. And we were looking at a lot of what they called ILEC, or integrated local ecological knowledge. And so how do you take local knowledge sources and integrate them into planning efforts and modeling? Thanks, Les. And then I was part of the PIRE project that Maya mentioned earlier, as well as the Strong Coast NRT, working with engineers. My dissertation was on wastewater management in Placencia, on the Placencia Peninsula in Belize, and I've also done work with food insecurity and addressing that for populations in Tampa Bay. I will be the project manager, so just expect to get emails from me about timelines and deliverables and accountability, and then general admin and onboarding and policy alignment stuff, and then helping out with logistics and making sure we get people in the room to kind of move some of these synergistic portions of these thrusts together. Those are kind of, yeah, that'll be it.
I don't think Dr. Jackson is on. Becky, did you want to go?
Sure, I can just quickly introduce our colleague and chair of the Department of Anthropology, Professor Antoinette Jackson. She will be involved with community engaged research primarily focused on Virgin Islands, based on some previous research there on response to disaster, resilience, cultural heritage, and we'll also be working with the Broadening Participation Research Thrust on workshops and capacity building. Dr. Jackson has published several books. Her work on the Black Cemeteries Network and the African American Burial Grounds Project has been featured in the New York Times recently. And she's a sociocultural anthropologist, and we look forward to her involvement with the project. Thanks.
I would add that she was the ethnographer for the National Park Services, and worked in both South Florida and in the Virgin Islands, and so she's familiar with Key Biscayne, Virginia, Keys Beach, and also the Homestead area in Florida, which are both relevant to the COPE project. I don't think Frank is on. Is he here? I think he had something, but Frank is part of.
He is.
Go, Frank.
Well, I'm Frank Miller-Carger. I'm at the College of Marine Science at USF, and I'm an oceanographer. So very interested in these coastal processes and feel a little bit out of water with all you guys. So I work a lot on marine biodiversity using in situ work and remote sensing, trying to promote the use of standards for coding biodiversity data and trying to see what we can do with remote sensing and in promoting the conservation of biodiversity and habitats. There are several people on the call that are helping me with the research thrust for this project here. Is Claudia Baron, she's a student. Digna Rueda, research associate. Chelsea Bryant, I don't think she's on, but she's also a student on the Blue Gap project on nitrogen with Maya. Carolina Peralta, who's not here either, she's another research associate, and she's very involved in what we call the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, OBIS. Mustafa Soliman, who's a student visiting from Egypt, and he's going to learn about remote sensing and how do we assess water quality, and in particular, how we link then water quality to some of the nutrient levels in rivers, and Tyler Murray, who's a programmer technician. So we're working on, at the moment, on with Borja and group. We met with Camila and Borja trying to figure out exactly what the needs for R1 are for it. And so there's many products that we would like to produce for the project. One is at the moment, so we decided to start with bathymetry. So we generated a prototype bathymetry product that Borja is going to use for the model. And so we're actually going to map the entire Mesoamerican barrier reef all the way to the northern Yucatan Peninsula and see what we get out of that. So that product is now prototyped, and I don't know if Claudia is going to show it here or not, but it's being put on a disk drive, and they're going to take it down to Belize to show it to people. And it's based on satellite data, so it will. People that deal with satellite data think that's absolute truth. Other people would want to check it to make sure that it is absolute truth. And we've been also working with Les's group and Sucharita, because there's a talk about having
the frigid temperatures coming to the lecture. I think it's going to be a really good one.
Oh, who's that?
Definitely a lot of familiar faces here. Is there anyone who hasn't been here before?
Somebody's teaching. Who's that?
Great.
Can we
So
mute?
this is the Great Bay Discovery Center. We're sort of the office/educational hub of the Great Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. So we're part of fishing.
Anybody want to take a guess on who that was?
Lisa, no.
Les.
Anyway, so we're looking to compare. Claudia's going to go to Belize now and try to take some ground measurements on bathymetry and also the location of some mangroves. See if we can start making maps that make sense.
Thanks, Frank. And I'm not sure, is Bernard on? He may not be on, but he's the Associate Dean for DEI in our College of Engineering in USF with, over 2 decades of work on intentional practices for recruitment and retention in our college, and lots of experience on federal and other grants that have really put USF, and in particular our colleges of engineering and Marines, our College of Engineering in sort of a lead in terms of issues around broadening participation. And so he's on the broadening participation team. Amanda, are you here?
Yep, I'm here. Hey everyone. My name is Amanda Brinton, and I am the postdoc part of USF on COPE. I graduated from the University of Florida in December of this past year, 2022, and I got my degree in interdisciplinary ecology with a concentration in sociology. I, up until this project, was actually focused on solid waste management, referring to trash, recycling, vegetative debris on islands in the Caribbean. My research focused specifically on Puerto Rico, and I conducted semi-structured interviews relating to disaster management policy, specifically focused on vegetative debris after hurricanes Irma and Maria, systems thinking, and impacts from the central government reorganization that happened on the island in 2018. And within my role on COPE, right now I'm taking the lead on organizing and tracking all previous studies within the NSF Google Drive. And I'm assisting project leads and project managers. I'm concentrating my efforts more with the R0 and BP, but I'm also hoping to assist R2 and the R4 thrust group. So, yep, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Is Christy on? Christy is a consultant, and she graduated from our program, was also a project coordinator on our NRT. She started a company called Community in Practice. They do systems thinking consultation, and is working with us on our Blue Gap project. She also currently works with the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality and with the American Society of Civil Engineers. So she was instrumental in the ASCE's report card, which was used for infrastructure bills. And I think she was probably helped to steer what was written for Florida. And so we could get in it with her in terms of what's included for nature-based solutions. But this is something coming from ASCE. Sorry, oops. And she's been mostly with the R0 team, working with in the Virgin Islands and in Belize. Claudia, are you on?
I am. I'm here.
Okay, great.
Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Claudia Baron. I'm a PhD student here at the University of South Florida in the Institute of Marine Remote Sensing. As Frank mentioned, I'm here, his student, and I'm going to Belize this coming week. I have my background in marine biology. I've worked with zooplankton and Centropomus undecimalis, which is a fish in aquaculture settings. And now I'm very interested in working in this project because it implies the community it's taken into account since the beginning. So I think it's a great opportunity to produce science, taking into account what the community has to say. And I love that about this project. I want to add that I'm from Colombia. I belong to an indigenous community there. So maybe that's why I really, really like working with communities. I'm in the research, in the R1 group as part of Borja and Frank's. We are producing here with my fellow remote sensing people here in the lab, the bathymetry map, but I don't want to like, because Maya is already sharing the screen, so I don't want to interrupt that. But what I can do is share it in the chat in case like you want to take a look at it. So it is now available for you to take a quick look if you want. So this is a preliminary satellite derived bathymetry for Belize. We used it taking into account a paper that was written by Lee et al. Using Sentinel-2 images, and it has a 10-meter spatial resolution. We used 2 years of data, and we process it using Google Earth Engine. So I wanted to show it very quickly, because this is a good advance from us. Like not just me, a lot of people here, Chelsea, Carolina, Digna, Tyler, like a lot of people have put a lot of effort here.
Thanks, Claudia.
Yes, thank you.
We have 5 more minutes. So I'm just going to ask the rest of the team to 30 seconds apiece. Chrisanne?
Yep, can do. Hi, I'm Chrisanne Hines. I'm a PhD candidate here at the University of South Florida in the Department of Applied Anthropology. So I am an applied anthropologist with concentrations in both environmental and cultural anthropology. So I really focus in on community engagement in terms of how community members are interacting when it comes to environmental like policies, laws, regulations as it relates to, for this project, coral reefs and mangroves. My background is, of course, in anthropology as it relates to environmental redevelopment and environmental injustices, as well as in international affairs and political science. Thank you.
Rory?
Hi, I'm Rory McKenna. I'm a master's student working under Becky in the Applied Anthropology Department. I'm an environmental and cultural anthropologist as well. I graduated from Penn State. I am going to Belize on Saturday. I'll be there until the middle of August, doing a lot of data collection for community engagement. Mike mentioned there's a lot of focus on climate futures. So we'll be doing research on that, but in order to understand that, we'll be looking at the way people are interacting with reefs and mangroves now and how people see those adaptations impacting their climate risk.
Thanks, Rory. Lyndon, are you on?
I am.
Yeah.
Hi. I am Lyndon Cheek. I'm Maya's PhD student. I got my master's from USF with Jim Mahelsick, looking at what I would say applied like appropriate technologies for communities. So figuring out not just like what the fanciest solution might be, but what's the one that's actually going to be working there. And then in my PhD with Dr. Trotz, been focusing on nature-based solutions for coastal protection, and then how to do community engaged code creation around that. This summer, I will also be in Belize at the same time as Rory, and we will be working together. I'll be mostly focusing on working with fragments of hope.
I don't know if Lyndon is breaking up for everyone. Is she? Or just for me? Lyndon, you're breaking up.
They're actually measuring the rate of attenuation of their, it's almost dead, so I'm not surprised, but.
Her and Christy are at a conference, and so I know Brian House is on, and so just Brian, Lyndon is interested in some wave attenuation and just more in terms of how does, what does Fragments of Hope and the other entities around the restored sites in Belize, how they integrate or use that. So definitely not the experts on looking at this, but in the process of bringing that technology into this space. In terms of some other initiatives that fall under broadening participation, we are going to be leading initiatives on training on community-driven research. We have the funding for community fellows, so developing that program. We have been working with journalists, community advocate in Belize, Yaya Coleman Martin, and just waiting to sort of formally have the documentation in place for her to fall under USF's budget. Leveraging team resources. So we know that Black and Marine Science and Fragments of Hope are partners on the project, and in terms of budgeting for the grant, they come under our budget as consultants. Some things that have been happening, we have been, you know, as the lead, sort of leveraging or dealing with some of the MOUs and so on that are needed here. So far, we have one with C, which manages the marine protected areas in the Placencia area, the Coastal Zone Management Authority Institute. We have a data management agreement. All of the data that they have is now on the Google Drive for the project. Human subjects research. Becky mentioned that the USF IRB was just approved, and tomorrow she'll have approval for niche, which is to be able to do the work in Belize. And I think ECU got their IRB approved, and hopefully Stanford should be coming soon. And those are more or less based on what was submitted for USF. We have a class coming in June as we finish off our NRT field project. And so there's overlap with COPE, and we're planning to do certain things over the next week to sort of hand the projects over. We are working with WWF Fragments of Hope and Stanford on planning workshops for August, both in Placencia and in Belize City. And I'll say thank you. And we are at 4 o'clock, so 30 minutes exactly. If there are questions that were, and Miami's in the process of an IRB approval also. If there are any questions, I don't know if we stay on for 1 extra minute, if anyone has a burning question. If not, we can end and say this was a kickoff. Mike, are we planning another team to present next week?
I got it. We'll double look at the calendar. I sent in the chat the sign up sheet. We've got a few signups. I can't remember if we have one signed up for next week, but please sign up. You've seen a couple of different formats. We're happy for either kind of format. Again, it's mostly to kind of understand folks on the team and, you know, kind of some of the work that you'll be doing, and, you know, just really looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.